Hello, it's Denise from Women Beyond a Certain Age. We have a very special guest today, and I'm thrilled. Her name is Magdalena Wszelaki, and I'm mispronouncing that slightly, but she already gave me permission because everyone knows I mispronounce names, and it is Magdalena was kind enough to say, if you're not Polish, you're not going to know how to pronounce it. And Magdalena, I'm used to that in my own world because I'm Italian, and people have mispronounced my name my entire life. So forgive me, but you're welcome. Hello.
Well, hello, and thank you so much for having me here.
I'm thrilled, and it's so lovely because we've had a few minutes to talk before we're on air, and you're just my kind of person. I can tell by your personality. It's lovely.
Thank you.
Now, here's what we're talking about today, and this is so important to women of every age. We're talking about breast health. We're talking about happy sisters, as Magdalena calls them, as the best boobs we can have. That's the idea. And I read every single thing that was sent to me from you. And I just want to tell them one or two things about you, and then we're just diving in. Magdalena is the founder of Hormones Balance Community and Wellena Products. Her online platform and products are dedicated to helping women to balance hormones naturally. And a published author of Cooking for Hormone Balance and Overcoming Estrogen Dominance, Magdalena is an endocrine nutrition expert, certified herbalist, speaker, educated, and a published author with a long history of her own hormonal challenges. These challenges include Graves' and Hashimoto's, an autoimmune condition causing thyroid issues, and estrogen dominance. And I have to tell you, I've also have Hashimoto's, and I've also been captive to estrogen dominance. So, Magdalena, I'm only sorry that I didn't learn about you sooner, but that's okay. That's why you're here today, because I think you could be so helpful to so many people out there. Now, how did you get into this? This is a niche, and you've obviously studied, and you've got a kit that we'll talk about later, a breast kit that we will have one as a giveaway. How did you become an expert at this?
I got fired from my previous job.
It's perfect.
No, but seriously, I used to work in advertising. I was a VP of strategy for a large advertising agency doing regional work, and all around. And yeah, and I got really sick, and then there were layoffs, and I got fired or laid off or whatever. It felt like I was fired, but
Yes.
and I went to nutrition school because I always had a lot of interest and just how food impacts. And I think it started off with when I was like in my late 20s, 27, 28. I had cystic acne. I was covered in cystic acne, not just on my face, but also my front, my chest, and my back. Like, Denise, I did not own a shirt that's got an open back or front. And I grew up in a tropical country, so to be fully covered up like that was very unusual. Imagine like you don't own a shirt that's got an open front ever in summer, right? So that was and by accident I found this article. I remember this was back in Yahoo days that said, you know what, food and specifically wheat can impact your skin and acne. And I was like, what? Is the bread and the pasta that I'm eating, right? Yeah. And so there was like the first connecting point of like, hey, food really. And I remember cutting out gluten, and this is, now it's like 25 years ago. I'm almost 50 today, right? So it was like almost 25 years ago. And I cut out gluten, and I remember not only my skin cleared out, not completely, because I found out later it was not the only food trigger, but my migraines were gone, and I had a lot more energy. I didn't have brain fog anymore. And so a lot of things just started changing, right? And then I did a food sensitivity test, which back then it was like, $2,000.
Sure.
And it was super expensive. And then it turned out that I also had problem with eggs and dairy. And so I did the elimination diet, clean up a lot of symptoms. And this is where, that like I already knew that food can really impact how I feel. When I got fired from my job, I went back to nutrition school because I had Hashimoto's at that point, a raging Hashimoto's. And And there was just no resources back on that. And I thought, I need to understand this deeper. And so this is really what took me, on that path, really, of wanting to, first of all, help myself. And then later, when I put Hashimoto's into remission by making a lot of dietary changes, I started realizing that estrogen dominance is the second thing I need to deal with, that I wasn't addressing, by treating Hashimoto's. And then I realized also then further that not only that no one is really talking about estrogen dominance about in women as such. And so really this is when in the past few years we've pivoted our entire practice towards dedicating it to helping women really understand what estrogen dominance is. Breast health is a big part of it, but it's not only. I mean, we can talk about symptoms, if you like, but it's really it's just a very underserved market. Yet it's like 70% of women experience estrogen dominance at some point in their life. So how can we not talk about it?
I have to tell you, Magdalena, I say it again. As a young woman, I also had acne as a young woman, and I would go to the dermatologist. Now, in my case, I did elimination diets, but he used to say to me, honey, this is all hormones. This is all hormones and stress from you. I know it is. Do you know what I mean? He was a great dermatologist. So at least he controlled so that there wasn't a lot of scarring. But I realized, and I took some drugs like Accutane, if that was the thing. You know this from when it happened. But the bottom line is, as I grew older, I found cysts, of course, in my breast. I had a gigantic one for years that was in the back of my breastbone, and no matter what mammogram I had, if I had to change doctors, they would see it and there'd be this horrible gasp. Do you know what I mean? As they were reading my chart, so sure that it was, I think, oh, that gasp means I only have like a month left to live. But what you're talking about was, I realized much later, but it was all estrogen driven. But I couldn't get any information from people. I mean, even I went to a female gynecologist, but actually it was finally a male urologist said to me, oh, honey, it's all estrogen. Now, I'm in my 50s by now. Do you know what I mean? Wishing that I had known some of this beforehand. So I'm just thrilled, and how great. And you're right. Talk about underserved.
Yeah.
Underserved.
And it's interesting when you say estrogen, right? And so I just want to clarify here something, because before we dive in any further, because there is something that, I think the term estrogen dominance is really important, that was formed so that it gives an umbrella name for a series of different symptoms that we can treat. But it's also, but the other side of the coin with this term, it has created a lot of fear around estrogen in women. And I want to just clarify that, it's estrogen dominance. It's not to say that estrogen is a bad thing.
No.
Too much of estrogen, or is how we break down that estrogen, how we metabolize, how the body breaks down that estrogen makes the difference. It's the problem, not the estrogen itself. Because when you're too low on estrogen, that's no good either, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
The fact that you are a spunky lady with nice skin and probably strong bones, and you've got cognitive functions, and you can, we can have a meaningful conversation, that's all because you have adequate estrogen levels, right? So I just don't want to demonize estrogen here in any way. In fact, so
You're
I'm not,
right.
because that's what happens with a lot of like, for example, my cookbooks, I use a lot of flaxseed, right? And so people write to us and say, you're crazy. Like, I have estrogen dominance. My doctor says I should be staying away from flaxseed because flaxseed contains phytoestrogens. And it's a big misconception, because that's the kind of estrogen that's in flaxseed that's super beneficial for us as women. And it's actually going to help your hot flash. It's going to help you sleep. It's going to help your cognitive functions, right? It's the estrogen that you find in, mainstream skincare products, or the estrogen from birth control pills that are synthetic type of estrogen, or is the estrogen that is internally produced, but how you break it down in your liver and your gut is not favorable, because your gut is not in great shape and your liver is just overtaxed. That's what the problem is. So I just want to clarify that here. That
you explained a lot. That's fabulous. You explained a lot in that sentence. So what are fibrocystic breasts?
Yeah, so fibrocystic breasts are largely due to a condition, the hormonal imbalance that we talked about, called estrogen dominance. And typically I can talk about breasts in a second, but it's interesting also to see that most women who have an issue with breasts, they typically display also a lot of other symptoms of estrogen dominance, such as, for example, very difficult periods, terrible PMSs, having fibroids, having thyroid nodules, a lot of the period issues. So whether it's scanty periods or heavy periods or absent periods or having terrible PMSs, like the way, for example, I did as a teenager, on the floor for 2 days with 2 types of painkillers on each side of my bed. That's largely that. But also, a lot of women with who had the pear shapes, put on a lot of weight around their thighs and hips. And they hit the gym 5 times a week, and they just can't lose that cellulite and fat around their the bottom half of their bodies. That's typically very estrogenic. If I put on weight, I tend to be very estrogenic. Not surprising, right? That's why I do this work.
Yeah.
If I put on weight, it all goes in my butt. Like, I've got this big jiggly butt, and so this is where, by overcoming estrogen dominance, we can actually resolve a lot of these things. And so typically it's not just breast lumps or right that can manifest. But yeah, so what are fibrocystic breasts? So this, there are cyclical and non-cyclical breast issues. So cyclical is when it goes along with your period, meaning a lot of women who still are, if you're cycling, is from ovulation till your period. This is when you can find a lot of engorgement of your breast, sensitivity. There might be a lump that suddenly becomes a lot bigger. And that's in the luteal phase, we call it, right? And this is where typically typically tends to be hormonal in that phase. Some women have a non-cyclical, meaning that they have breast issues the whole time. Now, the issue with why does estrogen play such a big role? Estrogen in excess, but again, I call it a dirty estrogen. Denise, would you mind? Let me just explain the dirty estrogen, what it is.
Please.
So imagine you're standing in front of this beautiful river, like somewhere up in the mountains. I live in Colorado. We have a lot of beautiful clean streams here, right? You're standing in front of a stream, and there is this bank in the middle of the stream. The stream is somewhat clean, but not really. As it flows through the bank, it separates it to 2 separate streams, a clean stream and a dirty stream. And that's exactly what happens with your hormones. You have estrogen circulating in your blood, and as it goes through your gut and your liver, that's the bank that I talk about. And that's when it separates it to a clean stream and dirty stream of estrogens. I call it dirty estrogens. The dirty estrogens is what causes all the symptoms that we talked about, including engorgement of breast, growth of growth of cysts and lumps in the breast. Why? Estrogen is highly inflammatory. So what it does is, in your breast, we have a lot of ducts, right? A lot of lymphatic passages. And one of the things that estrogen does is engorges and closes them up because they're so swollen. And so that's where the second thing comes in with breast maintenance and health is activation of the lymphatic system, right? So there is a lot of lymph nodes. A lot of people know that you have tonsils. And by the way, for women who have problems with tonsils in their childhood, they tend to be more prone to having a lot of problems with their breasts later on. And that's a connection with the lymphatic system. You have a lot of lymph nodes, along your neck, down especially under your armpits, right? That's a huge area there. And your breast as well. And so when estrogen makes everything so inflammatory and it swells the lymphatic nodes up, and then it causes a lot of stagnation of fluids in the breast, and that's what causes an engorgement of the breast. I know women who are A-cup wearers of bras, right? And as they transition to their cyclical, the second part of the periods, they can go from cup A to cup C within a course of 3-4 days. I mean, that's how huge the changes are. And it's not just like, oh, I've got big boobs, but it's extremely uncomfortable, right? It's painful. It's women don't want to have sex during this time. It's like off limit, don't touch my breast. A lot of women can't exercise the same way. So there's a lot going on. But basically that's it's a lymphatic system. It's your It's your hormones, dirty estrogens that are really causing all that engorgement and swelling.
I've been in menopause, Magdalena, for at least 10 years, maybe five, somewhere between 5 and 10 years. I've forgotten. But I have to tell you something. There's a couple of days a month I still have sore bosom. Do you know what I mean? And I know, and I say that to people, and people don't really, again, women do, but when I have said that to a male doctor that I have now, I think he thinks that I'm crazy. But you're in menopause, but you still need to have balanced hormones. You need all this information. I think goes from the lifespan of a woman. Do you know what I mean? And that's why I was excited when you could be on the show, because if someone isn't listeners not experiencing themselves, chances are they have a daughter. Do you know what I mean? Or a granddaughter or a sister that is still experiencing what you're talking about.
And then, I talked about engorgement of breast, but I mean, the other thing of breast issues, which menopausal, perimenopausal, menopausal women, postmenopausal experience a lot, is lumps on the breast. In fact, let's face the fact that majority of breast cancers are women 65 and above, right? That's the biggest demographic. Now, are they estrogen dominant? Because that's the part that to a lot of women, it doesn't make sense. Wait, I'm in menopause. My estrogen has tanked. My progesterone has tanked. I can't be estrogen dominant. In fact, one of our my colleagues on our team, her mom saw the book, my book, Overcoming Estrogen Dominance. She picked it up and she's like, "Oh, nice book," and she puts it down and she's like, "No, Mom, you need to read this book." And she's like, "I'm not estrogen dominant. I'm in menopause already," right? So again, is a term that can be misleading. Now, estrogen dominance is the main cause of breast cancers in women, right? Is estrogen receptor positive breast cancers are due to estrogen dominance. And guess what? It's the demographic that is low in estrogen who has that. So can you be in menopause and be estrogen dominant? Absolutely, yes. And the reason that happens is to the surprise of your doctor, right? Or making a comment saying how can it be? You may be low on estrogen in menopause, and that's very normal. However, the little estrogen you have, how you break it down to the clean and dirty estrogen makes all the difference. You're still breaking it up, even though it's lower than when you were in your 20s and 30s. And that's what makes all the difference.
That's a great explanation.
So one of the things that estrogen dominance causes in women, let's talk about breast health in menopause, right? With women, it doesn't have to be cancer. It never, first of all, cancer doesn't just happen just like that. It's years and years of development of tissue changes, of hormonal changes, but also DNA damage. And by the way, dirty estrogen also causes DNA damage that's a contributing factor towards breast cancer. But it doesn't have to be that way. You can start experiencing having lumps on your breast, cysts on your breast, right? In any age. It could start off with girls who are 14 years old, and it can go all the way to women in their 80s when they are suddenly finding a lump, because estrogen dominance doesn't differentiate. As long as you have dirty estrogens, it's gonna be contributing towards the growth of a lump. And I don't need to tell anyone how scary that is. In fact, I always think about it that there's certain memorable moments in our lives. I think most people remember where they were when 9/11 happened, or where they went, when Princess Diana died, whatever, if you're a fan of the royal family. And I think a lot of women remember when they found their first breast lump.
I agree.
It's so emotional, right? And it comes with so much of emotion of what is this? Is this cancer? How do I get it diagnosed? And then it comes with this whole guilt thing. It's it's all the smoking and the drinking that I've been doing. And is it the hormones that I took? Is it a birth control that I've been taking? It's a very, very loaded finding, right? And this is part of the reason why I do what I do, is because I remember finding my first lumps when I was in my late 20s, right? And having them throughout the years, through the course of so many years. And I came to a point where I'm like, you know what, every time that happens, I'm having this major panic attack. And the whole process of, like I said, having diagnosis another issue, because they push it towards a mammogram, and then you hear a mammogram, it's a terrible, you should do a thermogram, what about a sonogram? And and all of that, all these decisions, and then the wait time to get the diagnosis, right? I
Yes.
mean, one thing that we can all do and agree here is like do the right things so you don't ever find a lump again. And that was my whole mission, for my objective goal for my own health. And it is like I don't want to find another lump ever
Uh,
again.
so what can people do? What can women do to prevent that?
Yeah. So, we talked about the dirty estrogen. One of the, and I mentioned, remember how I said the liver, right? So
Yes.
I think the liver is a highly underestimated organ. And, we think of it this way. It's like a sieve that when you're making a bone broth and you just like pouring the bone broth through the sieve, there's like a lot of stuff that's left in there, right? And you throw it into the trash or recycling, not recycling, but whatever.
You throw it out. No worries. No worries.
You throw it out, right? And then and then you clean it out and you continue doing. And your liver is exactly the same. Your liver is a sieve that needs to be maintained and cleansed once in a while, right? Or cleansed on a regular basis. So this is one of the big things that we can do is I'm a big fan of changing the diet. First of all, elimination of a lot of the inflammatory foods that are causing a lot of pressure and a lot of loading on the liver. And so getting off gluten, right? Getting off, limiting dairy as much as possible, limiting sugar. Interestingly, a lot of women have reported to us that giving up coffee or substituting coffee with something else caffeinated. Coffee and alcohol are the two heavy hitters when it comes to processing for the liver to process. And so interestingly, we've had great results of like people already had clean diet, took a lot of supplements, and they were still having a lot of issues with estrogen dominance and like hot flashes. I forgot to mention hot flashes is one of the symptoms of estrogen dominance as well. And it's the minute they eliminated the coffee or alcohol, that's when a lot of things started changing. But also let's talk about what to add in, right? Because it's not just about like what to take out. Let's talk about what we can bring in.
Good.
So, I will say like a lot of really amazing bitter vegetables in the family of the cruciferous family, the brassica family, right? So the cabbage family. So cabbages, kale, collard greens. Throw away the goddamn zucchinis or lettuce. They are nutritionally really, really poor. And then substitute your lettuce, for example, with arugula or mustard greens. They're nutritionally a lot more dense, but they have these bitter qualities, but they also have a substance in them called that dialdehydomethane, sulforaphane, that are all really beneficial for the liver. So, let's see what else is there. Radishes, turnips, they're all wonderful that they're in that family. That you can just, if you can just do 4 to 6 servings or cups a day of those, it's already a huge win. The other thing that we can add in is, remember the liver loves bitters. So
liver loves bitters. I'm going to embroider that on a sweater.
The liver loves bitters. Yeah.
It's so funny. I'd never heard that before.
Mm-hmm.
But I eat a tremendous amount of arugula.
That's great. Me too. That's my favorite vegetable.
My favorite thing. I put it in everything. I put it
because you're Italian.
Yes. But I mean, I'll make 2 little poached eggs and I serve them, or even 1 poached egg. I serve it over arugula. And lots of times my husband says, I don't need any more arugula. I go, oh no, yes, you do. But I love arugula. That's great to know.
Yeah.
Liver loves bitter. Okay.
Loves bitters, yes. So, like today when you walk into most health food stores, there is always in a tea section, there's always going to be something about like liver support or,
yes.
And you will find herbs in there such as dandelion root or, or artichoke or burdock root, right? These kind of liver supporting herbs, I mean, they're just amazing in helping the liver to function better, and it also stimulates your bile flow, and the more bile you're producing, the more is going to help to cleanse and bind up the dirty estrogen. So that's another amazing benefit. Last thing I'll mention is adding a couple of tablespoons of ground up flax seeds every day is actually really wonderful for 2 reasons. So you like I mentioned, earlier about like how I get this email saying you're crazy, you use flaxseed in your recipes, right? Because here I am, got estrogen dominance. Or women who, for example, had breast cancer in the past, and estrogen receptor positive breast cancer, and their doctor says, absolutely don't touch anything that contains estrogen. And that is correct. Like if you talk about synthetic estrogens, right? It's very different with phytoestrogens. So hear this about flaxseed. It's just one of my favorite foods because it's almost like an estrogenic adaptogen. What flaxseed does is that it elevates your good estrogens and it blocks the receptors, on the cell, right? It blocks the receptors from the dirty estrogens from coming through.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing?
That's amazing.
Yeah. And there's so many studies showing that. And so it's kind of interesting that, doctors, you can really go on PubMed
right.
and look for flaxseed and breast cancer, excuse me. And there is so much research just showing how flaxseed works. And so it's not flaxseed oil. It has to be in actual flaxseed form. And don't buy the ground up, grind it yourself for like a week's supply, put it in the fridge in an airtight container. It tends to get oxidized really easily.
I see.
So we don't want you buy the stuff in the store. You don't know how long it's been on the shelf there. So you're just not getting the most potency from that.
And how can I use it? How do I use the ground up flaxseed?
Yeah, it's a good question. So you can throw it into a smoothie. You can just put it in, I just drink in a glass of water. And you can do it on empty stomach. It actually also helps with women who have constipation. Flaxseed bulks up, right? Like if you leave flaxseed in the water for a while, it just becomes like this jelly, right? So when you take it internally with sufficient water, it will bulk up and actually evacuate a lot as well. And constipation is another thing that we really want to work through, when you have hormonal problems, because when you're constipated, you are recycling all these estrogens back into your body, right? So we don't want that. Having a really nice bowel movement is just so essential. So flaxseed can actually also help with that, which is another amazing benefit.
That's incredible. And I've listened to a lot of things and I've gone to different doctors and I've worked with different people. No one has ever explained that as well as you have, Magdalena. Now, before we started talking on air, you said something about massaging your own breasts that can be beneficial. So can you share that with us?
Yeah, sure. So let me explain how to do it first, and then we can talk about what you can massage your breasts with, because that's another, and when to do it. So the whole idea is to really, support the lymphatic system. And a lot of times people ask, yeah, but I'm already rebounding. Like I have a rebounder at home, or, I do lymphatic massages like with a brush, and that's all wonderful. Just keep doing that, right? Something that's specific to the breast, and especially for women who've been having, some kind of a stagnation, like there is a pain point that just wouldn't resolve, and there's a lot of engorgement, right? And so this is what you can really do to help yourself. So put your hand, I'm just taking my left hand and putting behind my head, okay? And then what we're gonna do is I'm just gonna move my microphone to make sure it doesn't get in the way. And what we're gonna be doing is, just first of all, we want to be mindful where the exit is, and the exit is going to be where your collarbone is, right? So that clavicle there, that's going to be, we're going to be massaging towards this point. That's your exit when you want to move the gunk out. Now think of the lymphatic system like a network of highways with trucks that are driving through it to eradicate and eliminate all the trash out of your body, right? Including your breast. So what we're going to do is, my nipple is right in here, okay? So we're going to be massaging. I'm putting my right hand now over my left breast. And if you have by the way, for people who have a problem with their shoulders, just raise your hand as much as you can. You don't have to put it behind your head. It's just easier for me as I'm doing it. And from the nipple, and I'm putting my hand on like 12 o'clock on my breast right now. We're just going to be massaging the breast out to our exit point, which is the clavicle there. After 12 o'clock, then you move your hand to 2 o'clock and you do exactly the same thing. And again, towards the exit point. Now we move on to 3 o'clock. And so again, everything is towards. Now, when you come to the bottom of the breast, right, this is where a lot of people, you don't go over the nipple, you go under your breast and then up again. Okay. And so go around like 360 degrees, right, with your breast, switch your hands, do it on the other hand. That's it. It takes a couple of minutes to get this done. Now, where do you do this? You could do this when you're showering, when you're nicely leathered up, you're wet, you've got some nice soap. And again, not a soap that is full of chemicals, but a soap like nice Castile soap, Dr. Bronner, and then you can do it there. Some women prefer to do it using a cream. And again, if you want to use a really nice cream without any phthalates and perfumes in it and aluminum in it and any kind of nasty chemicals in it, and you're massaging the breast exactly the same way. You can do this before going to bed. You can do it first thing in the morning. And it's whatever energetically feels good to a person. When you're suffering a lot from that kind of breast stagnation, the best practice would be to do this on a daily basis until you really relieve a lot of the stagnation in the lymphatic system. Now, there's a couple of herbs that can be used in massaging your breast. So you can use a regular oil like sesame oil or coconut oil or one of your favorite creams. It does not matter. The cool thing is that if you really want to get even better results, there are a couple of herbs I want to mention that are just amazing. If you can get your hands on those herbs that are infused into oils, you can find them probably on Etsy, or if you have a favorite, herbal store somewhere near you, that you might find these herbs being infused. And so herbs, the first one I want to mention is St. John's wort. St. John's wort is, a lot of people know it as a happy herb, not to be taken with SSRIs, but we don't need to worry about that because we are applying it topically and we're not internally using it internally. St. John's wort has got an incredible anti-inflammatory property, so much so that it's just like the whole lymphatic system is just like, oh, finally, right? And everything just subsides and reduces the inflammation in the breast. The second herb, which is revered in the women's herbal community and has been for centuries, is poke root, Poke root. For those of you who are from the South, you probably know poke salad from poke leaves that has to be cooked in a very special way. In fall is a time to harvest poke roots. So it's the root of the poke weed. And that is something that historically in the women's traditions in herbalism has been used for women who have incredibly engorged breasts, who have fibroids, who have terrible PMSs. So poke has an amazing affinity for women's reproductive organs. And so if you can find, a freshly infused poke root into an oil, I mean, that's just a huge win. I can tell you that just by putting that on your breast, like even without doing the massage that I've explained, women just feel like the sense of relief literally in minutes. That's fabulous. How amazing that, it really is. Like, I've never had so much of love and appreciation for an herb, until you start working with them. And that's when it's like, wow, this stuff really works.
Where do you, at the health food store, are those fresh? Are they capsules? Are they teas? How do you buy them?
So first of all, we don't want to be using these herbs internally.
I see.
So we want to apply them externally.
Oh, okay.
Some people, herbalists, do that on Etsy. You can buy infused oils there. A lot of places, they have different herbal stores where herbalists would infuse oils into, like, for example, I live in Boulder, Colorado. We have an herbal store, and she infuses oils there. And so the other one, I'll mention one more oil, is GLA, gamma linolenic acid. A lot of women know about evening primrose oil.
Yes, I've heard of it. Yes.
Right? Yeah. So evening primrose oil is like, it's what the GLA is, what the special ingredient is. And that's like women who have PMS, for example. But we've discovered through research that, doing research for our own product, we discovered that GLA has got an incredible affinity for breast as well, both when taken internally or when applied externally. So what you can do is, if you have evening primrose oil at home, it typically comes in a capsule, in a soft gel that's got oil inside. Just poke it, squeeze the oil out, put it on your hand, on your palms, and then massage that into your breast. Okay. It's incredible. Like, also, this is a highly inflammatory oil that can just help relieve the pain really quickly.
Don't you have a kit Magdalena, that you have created for. Tell us about your kit, because I think we're going to receive one of your kits, and then when we broadcast this, we're going to have a giveaway so one of our listeners can
Get
uh,
it.
get it. Tell us
Yeah.
about your kit. This is
Yeah, so so we formulated, the product is called Happy Sisters. It has a supplement and a topical. So the topical contains all the herbs I talked about. We have pokeroot, we have St. John's wort in it, we have GLA. So we are using borage oil, but it's even better than evening primrose. But GLA is the key thing. We're using Nigella sativa, which is an oil from the Middle East. In the Middle East, in fact, they say Nigella sativa is the one oil that will fix anything but death. So it's a beautiful oil too, and some really nice essential oils. So that's for the topical. And then for internal, I paired it with a supplement because the supplement really helps to address estrogen dominance as its root cause. I'm not a fan of I think the topical is great for instant relief. But if you don't address estrogen dominance as a root cause of the issue, then you're going to struggle with breast issues for your whole life, right? So the supplement contains things like magnesium, DIM, sulforaphane, calcium D-glucarate. Those are all compounds that really help the body metabolize estrogen better. We also have something called red root in it. It's an herb that is a lymphagogue. It means that it helps the lymphatic system to function way better. We're also using things like endographis and yerba santa. Those are herbs that are specifically working on liver enzymes that degrade estrogen. So they're very targeted, yeah. So anyway, years of research, and so the supplement is, address the root cause, get rid of estrogen dominance, right? And then the cream is give me the instant relief.
It sounds fabulous.
Thank you.
Magdalene, I have to tell you, my head is spinning from all the information that you've shared with me today. My head is spinning. It also makes me, it makes me grateful that this information is out there now and that you're working so hard at it, because I think that sometimes, I just think that women's health, not some of it is our own, not our, I don't want to say fault, but we take care of everyone else but ourselves. Do you know what I mean?
Totally.
And we have a lot to take care of. So that's one of the reasons. Do you know what I mean?
And absolutely. And and the other thing is, it's which I think is totally not, it's a conditioning of, let's say, the pop culture or the pop medicine, is that it's so normalized to feel terrible, right? It's like, oh, you got a breast lump. I mean, you go and tell your doctor you got a breast lump. Well, welcome to the club. Everybody does, right?
Yes.
And so it's like we are normalizing not feeling okay, and then we live with this for a long time. Here's let me just say this. I didn't tell you this, but one of the big aha moments for me was several years ago, where I was kind of angry with my own body, of going why am I so sensitive? I go to, Portugal and Italy, and I go a little crazy, and I have gluten here and there, and I have more wine, and I have coffee, right? I come back and I have period from hell. My boobs are all swollen, and, I've got lumps all over my breasts, right? And it's just I'm a mess, and my skin breaks out, and I'm why am I so sensitive, right? I was angry with my body. And then I did a DNA test, and I had it interpreted by a couple of practitioners, and they go, you know what? You had just the shittiest estrogen metabolizer. And I'm oh my God, that explains why both sides of my family, I inherited obviously these genes from both sides of guess what? All my mother is a single child, but all her aunts, all her cousins, right? So my aunts have passed away from estrogenic cancers, breast, uterine cancer. Guess what? My dad's mom just passed away from ovarian cancer. And we have this very rich history of a lot of estrogenic cancers on both sides of the family, right? So, part of I said that I don't want to ever have a lump again. The lump thing is the smallest thing. My biggest fear is to go down the path of being part of the joke of my family. With the joke in the family is, we don't have a woman above 50 who still has a uterus. I mean, that's my dad's joke, right? And I'm well, this is pathetic. because dad
but that sounds, I'm sorry to laugh, but that so sounds like a kind of joke that my family would say. That's why I'm laughing. It's
And
terrible.
he can joke because he's a
Yeah,
dude,
now
right?
you
And
do
so
it.
and and I'm like, hey dad, just by the way, I'm 50 like next month, and I plan to hold on to my uterus for many more years to come. So so I'm gonna be the exception in the family. But anyway, the point is that, I think estrogen dominance, and since we're talking about breast today, your
Yes.
breast is an early indicator that something is off, that your body is asking for help. And it's an early sign. And it doesn't, a lump doesn't have to progress to breast cancer or whatever else, right? But it can if you ignore it. And so, against doctors' wishes, I will say that here, do something about it.
Now, let's see, when we broadcast this, my head is spinning. You've given me so many things to think about. When we broadcast this, Miss Cindy puts all the information up on you, how people can reach you. So your Facebook, your Instagram, your website, so that people can reach out to you. Now, I know you have the kit. Do you also, off your website, can people make an appointment with you if they need to, or do you do anything like that? Or no?
No, I don't do consults anymore, but I do have recommended practitioners who really know what they're doing, that we refer to. Yeah.
Good. Good to know. I cannot thank you enough for your time today.
Thank you. And, I just want to really thank you for bringing the awareness about breast health, something that's very underestimated, very ignored by both doctors and us women,
Oh, honey, I have to tell you, this is, and of course it's gotten better. I'm just saying this. I am 71 years old. When I was,
Wow, I want to look like you when I'm 71.
oh, please, the lighting is good in this room. No, I was probably 27 or 28. And I went to, my gynecologist that I've been going to, and it was a man. But I was under a tremendous amount of stress. My first husband was going to dental school. And it's like when he had medical boards, my skin broke out. We used, that used to be the joke. It was just I worked 60 hours a week. It was very, very stressful. I didn't sleep well. My diet, I don't think my diet was probably that great, but it wasn't horrible. But I'm just saying. And when I went to my gynecologist, and I said to him, I have terrible PMS. I mean, really terrible. And my breasts and period and all this are just horrible. And I really feel like some days I'd like to shoot him. And I meant it. Of course, I tried to make it sound not quite so. And he said to me, "Oh, you should get a hobby." And I said, "What?"
Wow. So does
And and at that time, that's when I started learning about, my body more, and started learning about just all of it that went with really terrible periods. But I'll tell you something. Women need to really be their own advocates and seek practitioners that can help them and open up, because it's a big deal. It's a big deal.
Yeah.
Well, I cannot thank you enough. All right. Well, Magdalena, I hope you will come back and talk to us again, because I could talk to you. I'm fascinated. Half the stuff that you talk about, I've either been there or I'm finally recovering from it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a very interesting.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to have like something on perimenopause, like that's gonna be our next focus for 2023. We decided a lot of people now are talking about menopause, and I think that topic is fairly well covered. But is the period before before you enter menopause, right? When things are going so off, that is so concerning, and everybody's just like, it's my husband, it's the weather, it's the mold in the house, it's everything else is to be blamed, without realizing like, oh shoot, I'm actually going through pain, and it can be a really scary time for women. So I want to dedicate the following year to that.
Yeah. You'll come back and talk about that, because I agree with you, and it is a scary time. Do you know what I mean? And again, and as you just said, not enough information. I also think so much information. This is terrible. You were talking about chemicals with soap and all that, which I totally concur. This is all filtered through the shit we're sold in this country. Do you know what I mean? we're so sold, and we're so sold we should be happy every day, and you shouldn't, you know what I mean, wake up happy. So, but it's really, you have to dig deeper than that. Do you know what I mean? You have to dig deeper than that, which is I think you're trying to do.
If you ever want to talk to somebody about like who really knows her stuff about toxins but delivers it in a very user-friendly, attainable way,
yes,
her name is Lara Adler.
Okay.
And lauraadler.com is her website, and she does podcasts, and she's absolutely fabulous.
Okay, we'll look for that. Thank you.
So if you want something that is, you know,
You-
but without like, don't do this, don't do that.
I know.
It's like, she's not like that at all. She's like, okay, here's what the 5 things we don't do, and here's the 10 things that we can do, you know?
Good. It's a better sales, isn't it? It's much better sales.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Miss Cindy, as always, thank Miss Cindy for keeping the train on the tracks. I thank you, Magdalena, for your very valuable time today. And you're going to come back, in 2023, and we'll talk about perimenopause.
Sounds good. And thank you so much again. I really appreciate both of you and your enthusiasm, and you were fabulous.
All righty. We'll talk again. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. If people want to reach out to us, it's womenbeyond@icloud.com. Cindy, I'm telling you, I can hardly remember my lines because I'm racing to the store to buy fresh flax seed so I can grind it up and put it in my smoothie. People have questions, again, it's womenbeyond@icloud.com. Email us. And thank you for everyone that sends us a message or a private message and that listens, because we're thrilled when people tell us that they learned something or they enjoyed it. And that's the idea. That was the goal. Thank you so much. Thanks, Cindy. Bye-bye.